So, but before we do that, was there anything in particular about four saints that you learned in your research? One of the things I was impressed about, I haven't read the whole book yet, but when I went through it, I was impressed at how much information you included. I mean, the chapters are really meaty. You only got four, so you might as well put a bunch of meat on that bone, and you did. So I thought that was really, really impressive. But what did you learn about each of these saints that you didn't know before or that really stood out to you?
One thing I was most interested in is I wanted to know about the early lives of the saints. And what I found time and time again is that parents who were very intentional about giving their children a Catholic education and protecting them from the dangers out there in the world, these are the parents who raised children who knew to love God first, to love their family, and most importantly, to want to follow God's will in the world. So you mentioned Saint Jose. So he grew up under Calles' Mexico, where not only was practicing their faith in public outlawed, but all religious instruction was outlawed. So what did this little boy do? He went around to all the neighborhood children. He taught them about Jesus. He always considered Jesus to be his best friend. And he actually brought them to see Jesus really present in the Blessed Sacrament. And in doing so, by the way, two of the little boys that he mentored and he taught actually became saints themselves and founded religious orders. But his parents were so intentional about supporting him in this effort. The same thing with Jerzy Papiuszko, the same thing with Saint Maximilian Kolbe, the same thing with Saint Stefan Wyszyński. So our Polish saints were, so the earlier saints, Saint Maximilian Kolbe and Saint Stefan Wyszyński, were actually born during the 123-year partition of Poland, and they were born in the part of Poland that was controlled by Russia. So their parents resisted the Russification of Poland. So their teachers in the state schools they spoke Russian. They were trying to teach them Russian history, but their parents taught them Polish history. Their parents read them Polish literature. Their parents took them to Mass. Their parents brought them up to be Catholic. There are so many parallels today about what parents need to be doing. The state schools not trying to raise strong, virtuous, faithful Catholics. We are our primary educators. We are the first educators of our children. It is up to us, the parents, to pass on these stories. The stories of the saints, they are the birthright of all Catholic children. We have some fantastic Catholic schools out there. I do a lot of work in Catholic education, and there are some fantastic schools out there that are passing on the stories of the saints. But there are a lot of Catholic schools that aren't. The fact that so many of the saints in this book were new to me, and I had to really learn a lot about them, I think is really interesting because they were new to us, but they weren't new to the saints that they inspired.
I think you're really tapping into something there. I mean, the loss of culture, right? I think about this quite often. In fact, you just reminded me when I visited the Polish parish here locally in my town of Houston, Texas, I don't know, 10, 12, 13 years ago. And I sat and talked to the pastor of this parish, and he explained to me how they teach the kids Polish. They teach them the language. They teach them the culture. They teach them the history. And I thought, the college U.S., that's a lost art. Unless you're living in a small, culturally focused community like this one or the Vietnamese parish, for instance, then you're not at all receiving this type of information. You're not learning the background of who you are as a people, where you came from, and the stories that made your ancestors who they are today. That is a lost art. We have lost it. And unfortunately, the way I see it, and Kimberly, I'd like to get your opinion on this, no matter how many immigrants come across that border south of us, or on an airplane, or on a boat, or any other way, bring us you're weak, you're tired. Remember that? No matter what, they always end up like you and I. They start out culturally strong. They end up just like the rest of us. I don't see that as a good thing. How do you see it?
No, it's not. But, another thing that I just want to add, and it's amazing for us to be passing on. So I'm half Polish. It's amazing to pass on my Polish heritage to my own children. But what's so cool about being Catholic is the church's history, that belongs to all of us. So St. Joan of Arc belongs to all of us. Therese of Lisieux and Saint Teresa of Calcutta, Blessed Yerji Papiushko, they belong to all of us. So learning their traditions can help us in our own faith and also help us appreciate, our unique heritage individually as families. But this is what should be binding us together. And as Catholics, we used to live as Catholics differently in the world. But as you said, that's really no longer the case. So it used to be assumed that when you go into a Catholic home, you see a crucifix, that Catholics don't eat meat on Fridays, that there was something very special about the weeks leading up to Easter for families that were Catholic. And for the most part, a lot of Catholics are just living their lives as if they are a part of the larger culture. And we are not called to be a part of the larger culture. Even in this post-Christian world that we're living in, we are called to be courageous for Christ in the world. And others should know that there's something different about us, and our children should take pride in that.
Amen. Well said. I like that. That's a good segue for what's coming up after this very quick break. Kimberly Bagg is our guest. Her book, Unbreakable, Saints Who Inspired Saints to Moral Courage, published by tanbooks.com is the website, tanbooks.com. But we are going to post a link to the book in our show notes over on our website, thestationofthecross.com/ACT. And coming up after the break, I beat this dead horse, I know, too often, but I'm going to beat it again.